"You've got 10 seconds to leave my porch before I forget I'm retired," Dana said flatly, one hand resting lightly on the barrel of the rifle she had leaned against the porch railing. The man in the blue HOA windbreaker took half a step back, blinking at the red dot now dancing across his clipboard, completely unaware it came from a harmless laser pointer but delivered with sniper-perfect accuracy. He stammered something about official orders and zoning codes, but Dana had already shifted her weight, scanning the tree line like she was still deployed. I stood beside her, arms crossed, watching the 3 other men behind him pretend they weren't scared out of their minds. They should have been, because they had no idea what my wife used to do for a living. The morning started off with the smell of hickory smoke and fresh-cut grass. I just finished mowing the yard, the kids were blowing bubbles near the oak tree, and Dana was quietly sipping black coffee while cleaning the scope on her M40 rifle. Not loaded, of course, not yet. Just routine. It was her version of yoga. Some wives do yoga. Mine checks wind speed and adjusts scope settings. Our home sat on 5 acres just outside the HOA boundary, or so we thought. That morning, our lives changed with one knock at the door. 3 men and 1 clipboard-carrying woman, later revealed as Karen, stood in a stiff line like they were ready to deliver a warrant. She had that brittle smile that cracked under the weight of her own entitlement. Without a greeting, she launched into her speech. As per Article 37, Subclause 4, this property is now under the jurisdiction of the Sycamore Hills Homeowners Association, she announced, handing me a crumpled, poorly printed letter. I blinked. We're not part of your HOA. That's where you're wrong, she snapped. Zoning errors have been corrected. You're officially part of our community. That means your lawn ornaments violate our aesthetics policy, your fence is unapproved, and your wife's rifle display is considered a threat to communal peace. You've been served a 30-day eviction notice. I didn't say a word. Just turned the paper sideways, as if the nonsense would make more sense that way. From behind me, Dana walked up with the silent steps of someone who used to infiltrate compounds undetected. She didn't say anything right away, just handed me my phone, already recording. Karen didn't notice. Eviction for what? Dana asked finally. Karen raised an eyebrow at her. Military toys aren't exempt from HOA guidelines. You'll have to remove all visible weapons, and the veteran decals from your truck. They're too aggressive. Dana stared at her so long and hard that Karen shifted on her feet. I knew that look. Dana had once told me in Afghanistan, she'd learned how to read enemy body language before they even touched their weapon. Right now, she was treating Karen like a live grenade with a pulled pin. I think you should go, Dana said quietly. Karen laughed, snapping her fingers. Boys. The 3 men moved forward. Not police. No name tags. One looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Another was chewing gum and trying to look tough. They had zip ties hanging from their belts. Dana stepped onto the porch, leaned over, and tapped the end of her rifle barrel once, drawing their eyes. Then she pointed to the security camera above the garage, the one they hadn't noticed yet. Step 1 more foot onto my land, she said, and I'll press charges for trespassing, impersonating officers, and attempted unlawful seizure. The chewing guy laughed, but it was hollow. Dana lifted her phone and showed a real-time feed of another camera hidden in the birdhouse. It was zoomed directly on Karen's face. Smile for the court, Dana said. Karen took the paper from my hand and tried to rip it out of embarrassment, but it flopped awkwardly, halfway tearing. You think this scares me? She hissed. We've dealt with stubborn homeowners before, but never one with so many threatening features. That's not a threat, Dana said calmly. That's a fact. You want to turn this into a standoff over lines on a map, go ahead. But if you send anyone else onto my porch unannounced, make sure their insurance covers being humiliated on camera and sued in federal court. That was the first time Karen actually shut up. As they retreated, one of the men muttered under his breath about calling for backup. Dana didn't move. She waited until they were all in their car and halfway down the gravel path, before finally lowering her stance. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Think they'll come back? I asked. Dana didn't answer right away. She just looked over the land like a battlefield. Then she turned and said, "Yeah. But next time, we'll be ready." I couldn't stop thinking about how wrong this whole thing felt. We weren't part of their HOA. We had the property lines clearly marked. But Karen didn't seem to care about facts. She cared about control. And she wasn't done. That night, while the kids slept and I double-locked the doors, Dana sat on the porch in the dark, scanning the tree line through night vision goggles. Her rifle remained within arm's reach. "It's not paranoia," she said as I joined her. "It's preparation." We slept in shift. Dana installed motion sensors along the property's perimeter. I started compiling everything: video footage, photos, timestamps, receipts, and copies of our original property deed. The next time they came, we wouldn't just be ready to defend our land. We'd be ready to expose them. And something told me this wasn't just about a zoning error. This was something bigger. Something personal. I just didn't know yet how far Karen would go to take what wasn't hers, or what she'd lose when she went up against the wrong Marine. The following morning brought a strange quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. Even the birds seemed hesitant to chirp. I found Dana already awake, crouched by the east fence line, quietly adjusting a new trail cam she'd mounted between two cedar trunks. She didn't speak until I handed her coffee. She took it without looking at me, still focused on her work like she was back on patrol. I knew better than to interrupt. When Dana entered a mission mindset, distractions were liabilities. What we were up against wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore, it was an operation, and she was gearing up accordingly. After the HOA's bizarre attempt to evict us, I spent the better part of the night poring over documents. The property deed was rock solid. Our land had been annexed 20 years before the HOA even existed. I pulled county zoning records, parcel maps, and legal boundary designations. Everything confirmed what we already knew: we weren't part of Sycamore Hills. But someone had tried to make it seem like we were. I stared at the newly filed document they brought yesterday, noticing small details. The signatures didn't match, and the notarization stamp looked generic. It didn't take long to realize the paper was completely fraudulent. I drove down to the county recorder's office and explained the situation to a clerk named Jay, a wiry man with glasses and an addiction to bubble gum. He raised one eyebrow when I handed him the eviction notice. He scanned it for 2 minutes, then turned to his terminal. His fingers clicked like machine gun fire, pulling up zoning changes. That's when he froze. His eyes squinted, leaned closer, then leaned back and said, "Well, this is new." "What is?" I asked. "Someone submitted a bulk reassignment of boundary lines last month. Recategorized 4 properties from private agricultural to HOA-managed residential. It got approved in less than 3 days. No flagging. No property owner signature. That's not how this works." I swallowed. "Who submitted it?" He looked back at the screen. "It's not a name. It's listed under an entity. Sycamore Hills Community Development Initiative." "That's not a real thing," I said. Jay smirked. "It is now. At least on paper." I left the office with a copy of every document I could get my hands on. The deeper I dug, the more disturbing it became. Someone had created a shell entity, possibly using HOA funds, to fabricate zoning claims and redirect county property code. It was all dressed up in legal-sounding language, but it was smoke and mirrors. The real question wasn't just how, it was why. What did they want from us? When I got home, Dana was building what looked like a miniature command post in the garage. 2 monitors were already online, streaming feeds from hidden cameras she'd placed around the property. There were charts taped to the walls and a notebook open to a page labeled Hostile Patterns. She greeted me with a nod, then got back to cataloging license plates. "They drove by again twice this morning," she said. "Same guys." "No. New vehicle. Rental car. Tinted windows. No HOA sticker." I showed her what I got from the county office. Her eyes scanned the documents faster than I could read them. By the time she was done, her jaw was tight. "This is deliberate," she said. "They're not just pushing paperwork. They're targeting us." "But why? We've never even gone to one of their meetings." She leaned back against the workbench. "That's the point. They want land. We're not in their club. They can't control us. So they're manufacturing a reason to remove us." The next few days blurred into a haze of prep work and observation. Dana trained the kids not to answer the door, not to talk to strangers, and how to trigger the silent panic alarm she'd installed in their rooms. She made everything feel like a game, hide-and-seek with secret buttons and walkie-talkies, but I knew better. She was preparing for a siege. One night, after the kids went to bed, she pulled out a battered leather folder I hadn't seen in years. Inside were her discharge papers, a copy of her sniper certification, and several commendations, including a citation for training foreign allied forces. She flipped to the back and pulled out a photograph, an aerial shot of a compound with circles and arrows scribbled across it in red ink. "This was my life before all this," she said, gesturing at the photo. "I trained people to recognize movement patterns, hide from thermal scans, and breach buildings using silence. But I never thought I'd have to use that here. On our land. Against neighbors." I didn't know what to say. There was something haunting in her voice. Not fear, exactly, but the weight of knowing what she was capable of. And knowing how far someone might push her to use it. The next morning, she made her move. She contacted a man named Alvarez, one of her old team members who now worked as a private investigator. She handed over the forged documents and every plate number we'd captured. Within 48 hours, Alvarez sent back a report that made our stomachs drop. The HOA president, Karen, had been quietly buying up properties bordering our land. She wasn't doing it under her name, but under the same shell entity that filed the zoning changes. Her plan, according to leaked emails, was to create a community sports complex, complete with a tennis court, pool, and clubhouse. But the center of that plan was our land. Without it, her blueprint didn't work. So she decided to fake her way through. Dana didn't react with anger. She reacted with strategy. "She's trying to force our hand," she said. "She wants us to fight back. To get scared. To leave. She doesn't know how long I can wait." I started compiling a timeline. Dana began assembling a dossier with photographic evidence, security footage, and legal documentation. We planned to present it to the sheriff. But she insisted on one more thing before that. "I want her to try again," she said. "I want her to walk right into her own trap." Dana installed one more camera. This one was special, an active motion-detecting device linked to a direct upload server. If someone stepped onto our porch again uninvited, their face would be streamed in real time to a private link shared with news agencies, legal reps, and veterans organizations. It was our insurance policy. It was also bait. The waiting began. Days passed. The quiet returned. But this time, it wasn't peace. It was pressure building beneath the surface. The kind of silence you get before a storm. Dana cleaned her gear, watched the feeds, and waited with the patience of someone who had spent nights alone in deserts with nothing but wind and instinct. I stayed close, holding the line with her, knowing it was only a matter of time before Karen made her next move. And when she did, she wouldn't be walking into just another homeowner's yard. She'd be walking into a battlefield built by a Marine Corps sniper instructor. It happened on a Thursday morning just before sunrise, when the fog still blanketed the ground and the dew hadn't yet evaporated off the grass. I had just stepped out to check the mail when I heard the sound of tires crunching over gravel, multiple sets at once, slow and deliberate. Dana was already in position, sitting in the rocking chair with her coffee, her expression unreadable but her eyes razor-sharp. She'd sensed it before I did. It wasn't paranoia, it was muscle memory. We both turned at the same time as two black SUVs came into view, headlights off, creeping toward our property line. The cars stopped just outside the fence. 4 men stepped out of the first vehicle, and 3 more from the second. They were dressed in black polo shirts with Sycamore Hills Enforcement Unit stitched on the chest. Not police. Not code enforcers. Not even real security. One of them had a body cam clipped to his chest, like he was filming for some wannabe YouTube channel. Another carried a clipboard, but this time, he didn't hand over a notice. He pulled out a crowbar. Behind them, like a queen bee surrounded by her drones, Karen stepped out of a third vehicle. She was dressed in a crisp white blazer and heels too expensive for gravel, and she was grinning like a woman who thought she'd already won. She raised her phone and started recording. "This is official documentation," she announced. "Due to continued non-compliance, we are executing an emergency community seizure. You are trespassing on common land." Dana stood up slowly, setting her coffee cup down on the railing like she had all the time in the world. She wasn't wearing any kind of tactical gear, nothing intimidating, just jeans and a flannel shirt. But the way she moved had that unmistakable quiet confidence of someone trained to stay calm under fire. She took 3 steps forward and said nothing. One of the men laughed, trying to impress the camera. "Look, lady, we don't want trouble, but if you resist, we'll be forced to detain you for interference." Dana tilted her head. "You're going to detain me?" He raised the crowbar slightly, puffing his chest. "We've got legal standing." Dana clicked a small remote in her hand. From the trees to their left, 3 hidden speakers clicked on, playing a voice recording she'd made earlier that week. It was her, calmly narrating a warning about trespassing and that all movement on the property was being monitored and recorded for legal prosecution. The sudden voice from nowhere made 2 of the men jump. Karen's smug expression faltered for a split second. Then came the paint. From behind the porch, a pair of motion-triggered paintball turrets activated, firing precisely at knee level. They exploded in splashes of neon orange and blue, splattering across shins, pants, and shoes. The men scrambled back, yelling, slipping in the wet grass. One fell flat on his back, his body cam pointing straight at the sky. Karen screamed, "This is assault." Dana calmly walked over to the fence line, not touching it, just standing near it. "Actually, it's non-lethal deterrent. Designed for wildlife management. Fully legal. The signs are posted and you were warned." I had stepped out beside her by then, holding a large folder. I held it up toward the body cam. "And this," I said, "is the real paperwork. County zoning map, deed records, and a cease and desist letter we filed with the sheriff's office this morning." The guy with the clipboard finally found his voice. "We were told this land was cleared." "Cleared by who?" Dana asked. They didn't answer. Karen, still trying to salvage her moment, kept recording. "You think this intimidates us? The HOA will push this through. We've already allocated funds. This land is ours now." "Funny," Dana replied, "because our attorney just finished uploading evidence of your fake shell company to the local news outlet's tip line." She pointed to a small antenna on the roof. "You're live right now, Karen. Every word. Every step." That was when the sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Dust kicked off the dirt road as the vehicle stopped just behind the HOA caravan. Sheriff McConnell stepped out, tall, broad, calm. A Marine veteran himself. He'd known Dana since before we even moved here. Karen spun toward him, her voice rising into shrill desperation. "Thank God. Arrest them. They assaulted us and are illegally occupying HOA land." McConnell didn't even blink. He looked at her, then at the paint-covered men, then at Dana. "Ma'am," he said, "you okay?" Dana nodded. "Didn't even have to load anything." The sheriff looked back at Karen. "This property is not part of Sycamore Hills. The zoning claims you filed were invalid and now under investigation for fraud. Your enforcers are impersonating public officials, and your shell company is being audited. You need to leave. Now." Karen's face drained of all color. "That's impossible. We've already started development plans. We've spent money." McConnell pointed toward the SUVs. Then I suggest you call your lawyer. Because if I don't see you in that car in the next 60 seconds, I'll be adding obstruction of justice to your list of charges. One by one, the men climbed back into the vehicles, no longer smug, no longer brave. Karen stood frozen, looking at the house, the fence, the cameras, and Dana. She whispered something, too low to hear, then finally turned and stormed into her SUV. They drove away in silence. McConnell stayed a few minutes longer. He walked the property with Dana, looking over the cameras, the traps, the document. He nodded with approval. "Hell of a perimeter," he said. Dana smirked. "Standard operating procedure. Let me know if they come back," he said. "And if you want to press charges, I'll support it." After he left, Dana finally relaxed, just a little. She sat down on the porch steps, brushing dried paint off her boot. I sat beside her, both of us quiet. The kids peeked through the window, having been instructed to stay inside during all of it. "That was round one," I said. Dana nodded. "She's not done. She'll try something else." "Let her," Dana said, eyes scanning the treeline. "She keeps pushing, and she's going to find out just how prepared I can be." That night, she began modifying the camera network, adding more angles, backups, and redundancy. I began gathering contacts, news outlets, veteran support groups, real estate watchdogs. Karen had escalated things publicly, and we would answer the same way. We weren't just going to defend our land. We were going to expose everything she was doing. And if she dared to return, she'd be stepping into a battlefield where the one holding the high ground was a trained Marine sniper who wasn't scared of bullies in polos or fake eviction notices. The calm that followed felt unnatural, as if the land itself was waiting. Dana kept her watch, but the SUVs didn't come back, and the cameras didn't pick up any movement near the perimeter for a full week. It would have felt like a win if it wasn't so quiet. Karen wasn't the type to surrender. She was the type to wait until people got comfortable again and then strike harder. Dana didn't believe in getting comfortable. She believed in being 2 steps ahead of anyone who thought they could walk onto our land with fake authority and matching shirt. We spent the week fortifying more than just fences. Dana wrote detailed statements of every interaction we'd had with the HOA, complete with timestamps, recordings, and names. I printed every document from the county office and organized it into folders, which we hand-delivered to the sheriff, a local journalist, and our attorney. Alvarez, the private investigator Dana had contacted, kept digging. What he found sent a ripple of shock through even Dana's practiced calm. Karen wasn't just lying about our property. She'd embezzled over $60,000 from the HOA's discretionary fund into a fraudulent account labeled Community Planning. The account had been used to pay the enforcers, rent vehicles, and even book a future construction contractor who had already received a down payment. Worse, she had created false meeting minutes claiming the board had voted to approve the budget shift. But 2 of the named board members didn't exist. They were aliases tied to prepaid phones, probably set up to pass as electronic vote. It wasn't just a scam. It was a blueprint for a hostile takeover, and our land was the crown jewel in the middle of it. Armed with this new information, we asked Alvarez to prepare a full report, and we scheduled a meeting with a local television reporter named Claudia Miles. She was young, eager, and had a reputation for loving small-town corruption stories. When she stepped onto our property with her cameraman, she expected another zoning dispute. Within 15 minutes of reading what we showed her, her whole tone shifted. "You're telling me the HOA president created 2 fake board members, moved 60 grand, and tried to seize your land using forged zoning paperwork?" Dana nodded. "And tried to physically evict us using unlicensed muscle." Claudia blinked. "You have proof?" Dana pointed to the garage where the monitors streamed live camera feeds and playback footage. "Every step, every threat, every lie. And a whole lot of stupidity." Claudia smiled like she'd just been handed the biggest scoop of her career. She started filming a segment right then and there. We gave her copies of everything, made sure she had consent forms for using our footage, and kept our statements focused on facts, not emotions. Dana spoke clearly and firmly, but with restraint. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her calm was intimidating enough. The piece aired that night. The fallout was instant. Karen's name trended locally on social media within hours. Residents of Sycamore Hills were furious. Many had no idea she'd touched HOA money at all, let alone diverted it into something as outrageous as a hostile land grab. Claudia's story ran with side-by-side footage. Karen at our gate shouting orders with her ridiculous enforcers, and then the legal documents proving everything she did was fraudulent. Viewers weren't just angry. They were embarrassed. By morning, HOA board members were resigning in droves. Those who hadn't known what was going on wanted no part of it. Others were suddenly unreachable, their phones going straight to voicemail. Karen's email was leaked, and she was flooded with angry messages from residents demanding answers, refunds, and her immediate resignation. Instead of addressing any of it, she went silent. Her silence only made it worse. Meanwhile, Sheriff McConnell launched a formal investigation. Dana was called in to give a statement, and so was I. We handed over every bit of evidence, every video, every audio file, and Alvarez's full report. The sheriff's office froze the shell company's accounts and subpoenaed HOA financial record. A forensic audit team arrived 2 days later. Dana stood at the edge of our property, watching as investigators carted boxes of HOA files out of their small community office. "They're gonna find more," she said quietly. "You don't fake this much just once." Claudia returned that afternoon to record a follow-up segment. This time, we stood in front of the porch, with our American flag in the background and our kids playing in the yard. Dana gave a short statement about integrity, land rights, and what happens when people mistake silence for weakness. The final clip ended with Claudia saying the sheriff's department expected criminal charges to follow within the week. But the most satisfying moment came 2 nights later. We were sitting on the porch, watching the stars come out, when Dana's phone buzzed. It was a video link from one of her military contacts. The clip showed Karen, in the back of a police cruiser, being led away in handcuffs. Her hair was a mess, her face pale, and she was screaming something about not knowing it was illegal. The arrest was for fraud, misuse of community funds, impersonating officials, and attempted unlawful property seizure. Dana didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. She just leaned back, took a sip of her drink, and whispered, "Told you she'd come undone." With Karen out of the picture and the HOA in full retreat, the community began to rebuild. The residents who had once ignored us now came by to offer support, drop off baked goods, or just shake our hand. Several veterans from nearby neighborhoods visited, sharing their own stories of dealing with overreaching HOA board. Dana spoke at a town hall meeting, encouraging the formation of a resident watchdog group to ensure transparency. Her speech was simple, powerful, and impossible to ignore. By the end of the month, the shell company was dissolved, the funds were frozen, and our land was once again clearly marked on public records as private, non-HOA property. The county even issued an official letter clarifying the boundaries and publicly acknowledging the fraudulent zoning attempt. Karen's trial was scheduled for later that year, and the district attorney had already built a case with over 24 charges. HOA policies across the region were re-evaluated, and Dana's name began to circulate in legal circles as the woman who shut down an illegal land seizure using nothing but preparation, poise, and proof. But for us, it wasn't about headlines or recognition. It was about sending a message. You don't mess with a Marine's family. You don't threaten their home. And you definitely don't underestimate the quiet woman on the porch with the steady hands and sharper mind than most generals. It had been 2 months since Karen's arrest and the fallout that turned the entire neighborhood upside down. Life around the property slowly returned to what most people would call normal, but for us, it was something more than that. It was earned peace. The land felt different now, more grounded, as if it too had endured the siege and survived. There were no more late-night SUVs crawling across our gravel drive, no more clipboard-wielding bullies trying to bark orders they had no right to give. But Dana hadn't let go of her habits. Every morning, she still checked the cameras. Every evening, she still cleaned her gear. She didn't do it because she expected trouble. She did it because preparedness was her language of love, her quiet promise to keep her family safe at all costs. Word of what happened to us had traveled further than we expected. A veterans group out of the neighboring county invited Dana to speak at their annual gathering, and when she got on that stage, she didn't boast or dramatize. She told the truth, plainly and with strength. She talked about land, freedom, vigilance, and the importance of standing up when the line is crossed. The room, filled with people who knew exactly what that line felt like, gave her a standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 minutes. She hated attention, but even she couldn't hide the emotion that welled up in her eyes when the applause didn't stop. Back at home, the neighbors had changed too. People who once gave polite nods at the grocery store now stopped to ask about property rights, HOA boundaries, and how to secure their own land against similar tricks. A few even asked Dana to review their HOA contracts before signing anything new. One man brought over his own camera system, still in the box, and asked if she'd help him install it. She did, without hesitation, and taught his teenage daughter how to monitor the feed. Dana wasn't just our guardian anymore, she had become a quiet symbol in the community, a reminder that resilience doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks in calm instructions and deliberate actions. The porch became our command post again, though now it was less about watching and more about enjoying. The kids played tag through the yard, chasing each other between the trees, while Dana and I sat with our feet up, coffee cups in hand. Every now and then, someone would drive by a little slower than usual, maybe curious, maybe respectful, and they'd give a small wave. Dana would nod, not overly friendly, but not cold either. She never stopped being watchful. It wasn't about paranoia, it was about principle. One evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line and painted the sky in streaks of orange and red, Dana looked at me and said, "I want to build something." I raised an eyebrow. She pointed toward the northern part of the property, near the old tool shed. A shooting range. Nothing major. Just a safe spot for training and community use. Vets, first responders, maybe even some of the neighbors who want to learn. I nodded immediately. She didn't say it, but I knew why. What we'd been through wasn't just about our land. It was about the knowledge that not everyone knows how to defend what's theirs. Dana wanted to pass on more than tactics. She wanted to pass on confidence. We started building it over the next few weekends. Some of the neighbors offered to help. A retired firefighter showed up with lumber. One man brought sandbags. A young woman who just left the army brought her own targets and helped calibrate the sidelines. It wasn't long before we had something simple but solid. Dana called it the line. Not flashy. Just a name that meant something to her and now to all of us. It was the line people needed to learn to hold, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. Meanwhile, Karen's trial moved forward. We didn't attend every hearing, but we kept tabs. Her defense team tried to paint her as misled, confused by bylaws, a victim of poor guidance. But the evidence was too strong. The jury didn't buy it. She was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, misuse of community funds, and impersonation of a public official. She was sentenced to serve time and pay restitution to the HOA members she defrauded. The same residents who once followed her orders were now demanding structural reform and accountability within their community. The new board reached out to us privately, expressing deep regret and pledging to ensure something like this could never happen again. Dana read their letter, nodded once, and filed it away. By the end of the summer, our property was not only protected but enhanced. The land was alive again. Crops we'd nearly forgotten to tend during the chaos began to bloom. The fence line had been repaired and reinforced. The paint from the security traps had long since been washed away by rain, but their memory lingered as a warning to anyone who thought a Marine sniper's family was easy to push around. Even the old oak tree in the front yard had been transformed. Dana hung a handmade wooden sign on it, carved with the words, "Stand ground, live free." Visitors always asked about it. Dana would just smile and say, "It's personal." The sheriff stopped by once more, just to check in. He didn't bring paperwork or questions, just a box of donuts and a nod of approval. He stood near the porch, looking out over the land, then said, "I think you changed more than just your corner of the county." Dana thanked him, and he left soon after. No long speech. Just mutual respect. That night, I found Dana in the backyard, standing alone under the stars. She was holding a small wooden box. The one that held her sniper qualification medal, folded letters from her team, and a photo of her first unit. I walked up behind her, not saying anything, and she finally whispered, "It feels like I served twice. Once overseas, and once right here." I didn't argue. She was right. We never asked for a fight. We never sought headlines or a platform. But when someone threatened our home, tried to rewrite the rules to steal what we built, Dana did what she was trained to do: assess, prepare, respond, and protect. And in doing so, she didn't just defend our family. She reminded an entire community that strength isn't always loud, that quiet courage can be far more formidable than the loudest bully at the gate. And as we stood there, arms around each other, the land silent and strong beneath our feet, we both knew one thing without saying it aloud. We'd never leave. And no one would ever take it from us again.